I returned home unexpectedly and discovered my daughter-in-law revealing incredible love for my son. Jack stepped off the bus, the familiar sights of his small Midwestern town both welcoming and foreign. It had been years since he'd last walked these streets. The air was thick with nostalgia, the sweet scent of blooming honeysuckle mingling with the memories of laughter and summers spent with family. But a heaviness hung in the air, reminding him of the broken connections that now defined his life. Mike, his beloved son, was gone, and in his absence, Jack felt the striking silence of grief. As he approached the old family home, he could almost hear Mike's laughter echoing off the weathered walls. The front porch still creaked the same way it had all those years ago, but the warmth was lost. Inside, memories clung to the walls like shadows. Jack stepped into the kitchen, where he saw Emily, a ghost of the vibrant woman he once knew. Her eyes, though bright, were clouded with sorrow. She stood there, hands resting on the counter, and in that moment, Jack felt the weight of a decade hang heavy between them. "Jack," she said, her voice steady yet fragile. He could feel the barrier of unspoken words separating them, thick and suffocating. He wanted to embrace her, to tell her how proud he was of her strength, but the pain of loss held him back. He watched as Emily moved with purpose, creating care packages for the families of fallen soldiers. She had transformed her grief into action, founding a support network that seemed to ripple through the town unnoticed. But for Jack, her drive felt like a sharp reminder of what he had lost. It stirred an uncomfortable mix of pride and resentment in him. Emily's success in honoring Mike's legacy seemed to mock his quiet despair, and yet, despite the tension, there were quiet moments that drew him closer. She would sometimes share stories of their time together, revealing bits of Mike he'd never known. Each anecdote tugged at his heart, drawing him toward her, even as he grappled with feelings of inadequacy. One afternoon, he found himself volunteering at the community center, eyes trained on Emily as she comforted another widow, an intense moment of shared grief as tears flowed, unrestrained. Jack stood by, witnessing the raw vulnerability, and in that instant, a flicker of understanding lit up his heart. This was how Emily preserved Mike's memory, not just through sadness, but through binding her love into action for those left behind. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But just as they began to make tentative steps toward healing, a crisis arose. A town event meant to honor veterans loomed close, and its execution clashed fiercely with Jack's conservative views on tribute. Emily envisioned a celebration of truth, a bold reminder of the losses that shaped their community, but Jack longed for traditional dignity, the quiet respect he believed veterans deserved. As they squared off, tension thickening the room, Jack realized they were standing at a precipice. The choices they would make in the coming days could either close the gap between them or send them spiraling apart. Would he find the courage to reconcile the past with the present? Would love and family redefine themselves amid their grief? Jack felt the pull of hope, tempered by fear, as they faced the uncertainty of what lay ahead. As the days passed, the tension between Jack and Emily grew palpable. Each conversation felt like stepping on thin ice. They navigated the kitchen, the community center, and the church with an unspoken understanding that they were both grieving and trying to hold on to what little connection remained. Jack would often steal glances at Emily, her resolute figure standing firm in the face of pressure. Her determination to honor Mike with the upcoming Veterans event clashed with Jack's desire for quiet remembrance. One evening, over a simple dinner, the air heavy with unsaid words, Jack took a deep breath. "Emily," he started, voice wavering, "can we talk about the event?" He could feel heartbeats echoing in his ears. This was at a moment to either bridge the gap or take a step back. Emily looked up, a flicker of hope lighting her features. "I'd like that, Jack." She placed her fork down, her attention unwavering. Jack felt the gravity of her gaze, knowing this would affect everything. "I understand that you want to create something meaningful," he said, choosing each word carefully, "but this, it feels too bold. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around it." He could feel shame creeping in as he voiced his worries, afraid they'd fuel the divide. "I loved Mike as much as you did." "This is how I grieve," Emily replied, her voice steady but tinged with hurt. "I don't want this event to be a traditional ceremony where we just hide behind our pain. We have to acknowledge the truth of what happened. Otherwise, what are we even honoring?" Jack's heart clenched. He could sense the desperation in her words, and need to honor her husband's memory while he himself was clinging to the past. But can't there be another way? One that keeps the dignity intact? "Dignity isn't just about silence," she shot back, frustration evident. "It's about voicing those stories, Jack. It's about making sure they're remembered, truly remembered." Each word felt like it struck at the core of Jack's sorrow. He wanted to honor Mike, but how? In that moment, Emily broke down, tears streaming down her face. Jack felt his resolve waning. He stood up and moved next to her, sitting on the other side of the table, his heart breaking as he watched her grief spill into the world. Slowly, he reached out, placing a hand over hers. "I'm sorry, Em. I don't want to fight you. It hurts me to see you in pain. I'm just scared." His voice cracked, vulnerability spilling forth and mingling with their shared grief. Emily wiped her tears, her breath trembling. "So am I, Jack. This is all I have left of him. Every event, every moment, it's my way of keeping him alive. Can you see that?" Jack's eyes softened as he studied her. He could feel the love she held for Mike, a burning light against the backdrop of their shared shadows. "Maybe," he began, the words tasting bittersweet, "maybe we can blend both our ideas. We can honor him with tradition while also sharing the truth. A space for everyone to feel, to remember." For the first time, Emily smiled through her tears. "That might just work, Jack. It might just work." As they sat there, hands intertwined, both felt a flicker of hope igniting in their hearts. Together, they were forging a path forward, stitching together love and remembrance in a world altered forever by loss. But just as they began to envision their plan, a familiar face appeared at the door. Mike's old friend Sam. His expression was somber as he stepped inside, news of a shocking incident in the town troubleshooting their newfound solace. "What is it, Sam?" Jack's heart dropped. There was a feeling of dread in the air, and he feared the next words would change everything. Sam took a deep breath, the kind that seemed to draw all the air from the room. His eyes flicked between Jack and Emily, his usual playful demeanor replaced by a heavy seriousness. "There's been an accident down by the lake. A truck crashed, and there were casualties. 2 people, local guys." He hesitated, pausing as if sorting through the avalanche of news. "One of them it's Ben." Jack felt the blood rush from his face. "No, not Ben. His family." Emily's hand tightened around Jack's, her brows knitting in concern. "What happened? Is he okay?" "I don't know," Sam admitted, his voice heavy with dread. "They've taken him to the hospital. No word on his condition yet." Jack's heart raced, worst-case scenarios flashing through his mind. Ben had finally begun to heal after the deployment, finding a fragile stability in their town. Losing anyone felt unthinkable. He could hardly imagine the hurt Emily would face if she lost another piece of her life. "Do you think?" Jack's voice fell just above a whisper, "Do you think it was an accident?" A new wave of fear clutched at him. Ben had always been reckless, a man who wouldn't think twice about speeding down the winding roads, but to picture him hurt, or worse, felt like a nightmare he couldn't wake from. "I can't say," Sam replied, his shoulders sagging under the heaviness of the situation. "They just told me it was a crash and are urging everyone to stay away. Police are investigating. You both should go to the hospital." The thought of rushing into chaos felt overwhelming. Jack instinctively turned to Emily, reading the horror in her eyes. "We should head over," he said, squeezing her hand tightly. "We need to know." "Yes," she choked out, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have to be there for him." They stood abruptly, chairs scraping across the floor as they moved toward the door. Jack couldn't shake the dread curling tightly around his chest. He couldn't bear to think of losing another loved one. Not now, not when they had finally begun to uncover a path toward healing together. As they stepped outside, the cool evening air hit their faces, a stark contrast to the heaviness that enveloped them. Dark clouds loomed above, mirroring the mood hanging between them. Jack and Emily climbed into his truck, the silence clanging like an unsteady bell. Every moment spent in grief felt more profound, more potent, as they clung to hope for Ben. The drive felt eternal, each passing minute stretching into a small eternity. Thoughts raced through Jack's mind. What if they lost him? What would that mean for Emily? For their small community? They needed strength right now, not just for themselves but for their friends who were hurting too. Once they arrived at the hospital, the fluorescent lights cast a harsh glare as they walked through the double doors. The scent of disinfectant was overwhelming. Emily's grip on Jack's hand tightened, her nails digging slightly into his skin. What if he? She couldn't finish the thought as Jack pulled her close. "Whatever happens, we face it together." They approached the reception desk. "We're looking for Ben Carter," Jack said, his voice steady despite the ache in his chest. The receptionist turned, her expression unreadable. "You'll want to speak with a doctor. Please take a seat." As they sank into the plastic chairs in the waiting area, fear hung heavily in the air. Jack glanced around, taking in the anxious faces and whispered prayers of the other visitors. Emily's eyes began to glisten, a fresh wave of tears threatening to spill over. Just then, a doctor stepped into view, scanning the room intently. Jack's heart quickened. Was this the moment they'd been both dreading and preparing for? The doctor called their names, and they stood together, hearts pounding, stepping into the uncertain unknown. "What's going on?" Jack asked, urgency creeping into his voice. As the doctor opened his mouth to speak, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this moment might change everything. The truth of it felt unbearably close. But would it bring them closer, or would it pull them apart? The doctor took a deep breath, his expression a careful blend of professionalism and compassion. "I'm sorry to have to tell you this." He paused, measuring his words. "Ben has injuries from the crash. He's stable for now, but we need to perform surgery to relieve some pressure on his brain." Jack's world suddenly felt like it was tilting. He found it hard to breathe, and Emily's grip on his hand became an anchor in the storm. "Will he be okay?" Jack's voice trembled, but the doctor answered with a determined calm. "He's fighting hard, but there are no guarantees. We need to act quickly." It sounded like a death sentence, even if he didn't say it outright. The words hung heavy in the air between them. Emily's breath hitched beside him, tears understandingly pooling in her eyes. Jack's heart sank deeper. He felt both fear and anger, wanting to shout, to scream at the unfairness of it all. Ben wasn't just a friend. He was family. The thought of his vibrant spirit fading pushed him to his breaking point. "Can we see him before the surgery?" Emily's voice broke through the haze, firm despite shattered feelings. "I'll arrange it," the doctor replied, offering a nod as he turned away. They stood in a daze, feeling time slow down as they processed the news. Jack felt a burning heat in his chest, the urge to fight against the inevitable clawing at him. He wanted to reach out, to scream at the heavens and demand more time. They were led to a small room, blinking fluorescent lights buzzing above. It was stark and unnerving, filled with machines and beeping sounds. In the far corner, Ben lay unconscious, a halo of medical equipment surrounding him. His face looked peaceful, untouched by the chaos surrounding him, but Jack recognized the fragility it held. Emily gripped Jack's arm tighter, her body shaking with unvoiced sobs. He can't leave us, not now. He's come so far. Her words faltered as she leaned close to Ben, brushing hair gently away from his forehead. A lump formed in Jack's throat as he watched her, a true testament to the love they all shared. He stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on Ben's shoulder. "We're here, brother. We're not going anywhere," he whispered, though it felt almost like a plea. In that moment, something shifted inside him. He knew they had to fight for Ben, not just for himself, but for the community that had come to depend on him. Jack straightened, a new sense of determination igniting within him. Emily looked up, searching his eyes, and he could see the flicker of hope amidst the sorrow. They stood together, side by side, their breaths synchronizing in the charged silence of the hospital room. Jack could practically feel the weight of all those who had crossed paths with Ben in their lives, living, breathing creatures rallying against this injustice. Suddenly, the doctor re-entered the room, interrupting their moment. "We need to prepare him for surgery now. Can we be with him?" Jack asked, his voice cutting through the quiet. The thought of Ben being alone terrified him. The doctor hesitated, weighing the rules against the heartfelt request. "I can allow one of you in the pre-op. The other will have to wait here." "I understand, and I want to be accommodating." Emily turned to Jack, eyes wide and pleading. "You should go. You need to be there for him." Her voice was steady despite the worry etched on her face. "No, let me stay with you," Jack insisted, feeling protective over her vulnerability. "Jack, please," she urged softly, hands clasping his tightly. "This is what he needs right now. You can do this." With a small nod, Jack felt a swell of gratitude and fear all at once. He didn't want to let her down, or Ben either. They had already been through too much. After a few more hurried words, the doctor guided Ben out of the room, leaving Jack and Emily standing in the harsh light of the waiting area, shadows creeping in from the corners of their minds. An unspeakable weight pressed on their hearts. Jack could only hold Emily's gaze, their silent communication deepening with unspoken fears. What if this was the moment that changed everything? What if he never returned? "Whatever happens, we fight," Jack whispered, clenching her hand tighter. As they waited in the sterile space, they still clung to the fervent hope that Ben would pull through. The thought surged in his mind, racing and restless. But would it be enough? The next few hours would determine the path they would walk, together or apart. The waiting room felt like a time sink, the ticking clock echoing louder with each passing second. Jack's heart raced against his ribcage. He wished he could see Ben just one more time, to share some words of strength, some last encouragement before the fight began. But the tension between Jack and Emily pulsed with an undercurrent of anxiety, a shared need to know the outcome that lay beyond the door. What if he doesn't come back? Emily's voice wavered, hollow and fragile, as if she were unraveling. Jack turned to her, his brows furrowing. "He will. He's a fighter, Em. You know that as well as I do. We can't let fear win. Not now." Yet as he spoke, doubt crept into his heart, gnawing at his resolve. They had weathered storms together before, but this felt different. Minutes morphed into an hour, or maybe more time lost its meaning and became nothing but an endless stretch of anxiety. Jack felt the weight of the hospital walls pressing down on them, trapping them in a purgatory between hope and despair. He turned to look at Emily, who sat with her head buried in her hands, her shoulders heaving quietly. "Hey," he said gently, sliding next to her. He placed a hand on her back, rubbing small circles with his thumb. "You need to be strong too. For Ben. And for yourself." Emily looked up, and in her eyes, he saw not only pain but a fierce spark of resolve. What if he doesn't want to fight anymore? What if? Her voice trailed off, haunted by unthinkable possibilities. "We can't think like that," Jack interrupted, squeezing her shoulder. "He's always been there for us. Now it's our turn to be there for him." Just then, a nurse popped her head through the door, her face caught between professionalism and something softer. "Emily?" Jack? The surgery is over. You can see Ben now, but he is still unconscious. Jack's heart leapt, a delicate flame of hope flickering in his chest. Is he? He couldn't ask the question, fearing what the answer might be. Stable. The nurse offered a small smile. It's going to take some time. He is in recovery now, but the doctor will want to speak with you both. They followed her, their hearts pounding in sync as they crossed sterile linoleum floors, hospital scents of antiseptic and something metallic mingling in the air. When they entered the recovery room, Jack's breath caught. Ben lay there, skin pale against the stark white sheets, still surrounded by the machinery that had been holding him together. A bandage wrapped around his head, and his chest rose and fell steadily. That rhythm alone brought Jack solace, yet it came tethered with the fear of what might happen next. Emily, tears gliding down her cheeks, stepped closer to the bed. She reached out, brushing her fingers against Ben's hand. Please, Ben, come back to us. We need you. The sincerity in her voice wrapped around them like a warm blanket, infusing a bit of hope into the starkness of the moment. Jack moved beside her, taken aback by the bond of love and desperation. The intensity flooded over him as he squeezed Ben's hand gently. We're here, man. Don't you dare give up. After what felt like an eternity, the doctor entered the room, his expression serious yet tempered with comfort. Ben is doing as well as we could hope for, but it'll be a long road ahead. He might wake up soon, but we need to monitor him closely. What if he doesn't remember anything? Emily whispered, horror lacing her voice. Memory loss can happen after incidents like this, but it's uncertain, the doctor replied, and Jack saw how the weight of those words rested on Emily. The best thing you can do is be there for him. Their unbreakable connection felt like a lighthouse in a storm, guiding them through the uncertainty. Hours slipped by, but Jack and Emily remained glued to Ben's side, sharing stories of when they had hiked through the mountains or went to that concert last summer. They talked about silly moments and future plans, anything to remind Ben of the vibrant life waiting for him. As night descended, the faint beeping of the monitor began to shift. Emily leaned closer, her breath catching. Jack, listen. For a fleeting moment, Ben's eyelids fluttered. Jack felt the energy shift in the room, an electric charge of possibility. Hope surged through him like an adrenaline rush. Could this be the moment they'd waited for? But just then, a loud crash echoed from down the hall, rattling the lights above them. Jack turned, heart racing anew. Was something else happening? Would their hope dangle in the balance once more? As he tried to dissect the sound, his gut twisted, forcing him to wonder, what now? Would courage be enough to see them through the next challenge that loomed ahead? Ben's eyelids fluttered again, this time more vigorously. Jack felt the stirrings of hope expand within him, threatening to burst free. He focused on Ben's face, searching for any signs of recognition. Would he see the familiar spark in his friend's eyes? Emily leaned even closer, her posture fragile as if it could snap under the weight of the moment. Jack could see her lips moving, whispering encouragement. His heart swelled with gratitude for her unwavering spirit. They were in this together, every step hammering out a new rhythm, pushing against doubt. Come on, Ben, Jack whispered, his voice raw and shaky. You can do this. We're right here. And then, just like that, the monitors began beeping erratically. The steady rhythm turned into chaos, and Jack's heart plummeted. He glanced at Emily, whose wide eyes mirrored his rising panic. What's happening? She gasped. A flurry of nurses rushed into the room, their focused energy drowning out the silence that had clung to them moments before. Jack and Emily instinctively backed away, the protective love they felt boiling down to sheer helplessness. Stay calm, one of the nurses said with an air of authority, directing the others efficiently. We need to stabilize him. Ben. Emily called out, desperation sinking into her bones. Jack felt as if the walls were closing in. His own breathing quickened, pulse pounding in his ears. The nurses worked with practiced speed, machines whirred and beeped, creating a cacophony that hummed under the tension. He felt a hand grip his wrist, a grounding force. It was Emily, staring at the chaos unfolding in front of them, fear flashing in her eyes. "What if he doesn't make it?" she whispered, tears welling again. Jack met her gaze, determined. "We have to believe he will. He has to." But doubt loomed over them like a storm cloud, and Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were losing him again, that their unity was wavering under the pressure. The doctors arrived, their presence a shield of authority and knowledge. They commandeered the room, fingers dancing over screens and adjustments, yet Jack felt so small, powerless to do anything other than watch and wait. Minutes dragged on. Jack's thoughts spiraled. They had fought so hard to reach this moment, was it all for nothing? But there was a shift in the room. The urgent whispers subsided as the nurse began to calm the monitors. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. "Ben! Come on, man!" Jack shouted, voice sharp with pleading urgency. And then it happened. Ben's chest surged, and he coughed, a deep, rasping sound that ricocheted through the air, filling the room with life. Jack felt a rush of relief as Ben's eyes opened, unfocused at first, then squinting at the bright lights above them. "Ben?" Emily's voice was barely a whisper, full of hope. Jack watched as recognition flickered across Ben's features. His friend's mouth moved, a silent attempt to speak. "Jack?" Ben croaked, his voice so scratchy it nearly shattered Jack's heart into a million pieces. "Yes. I'm here, buddy." Jack rushed forward, clenching Ben's hand again, soaking up the warmth. Emily leaned down, brushing her fingers against Ben's forehead with an expression so gentle that it seemed to heal the room. "You're safe. You made it back to us." But before they could fully rejoice, the reality of Ben's situation washed over them. He blinked rapidly, disoriented. "What happened?" Jack caught his breath, the weight of every moment crashing down on him. "You got hurt, Ben. But you're here now, just take your time." Ben frowned, confusion clouding his eyes. "I can't remember." Before Jack could respond, the loud crash from earlier suddenly hit him again. "What's going on out there?" The tension shifted once more in the room. The urgent beeping resumed, and murmurs floated in from the hallway. A nurse dashed in, her cheeks flushed and her expression tight. "We have a situation," she said, breathless. "There's been an incident in the ER." Jack exchanged a glance with Emily, dread pooling in the pit of his stomach. "What kind of incident?" As the nurse continued, Jack couldn't shake the sense that their fight wasn't over yet. Something larger loomed just outside the hospital walls, waiting to disrupt whatever fragile piece they could grab hold of. "Stay here," he said to Emily and Ben, steeling himself as he turned toward the door. "I'll find out what's happening." But inside, he was terrified. Would they be forced to face another storm tonight? What lay behind the upheaval? Jack stepped into the hallway, the noise of the hospital rushing over him like a wave. The corridor was a dizzying swirl of activity. Nurses moved swiftly, their faces set in determination, while the wail of sirens echoed in the distance. Every second felt stretched, time warping into a painful reminder of how fragile their situation was. "What's going on?" he asked a nurse who hurried by. Her eyes darted, but the urgency kept her pace brisk. "We've got multiple trauma cases coming in. Just stay clear of the ER." She called back, barely breaking stride. Jack felt his heart sink. He dared to peek through the double doors that led to the emergency room, the tension palpable even from a distance. Medical staff swarmed, their movements choreographed by experience. He saw a gurney being wheeled in, and for a moment, his breath caught in his throat. What if Ben had to face this kind of chaos? What if it slipped from their fingers again? Turning on his heel, Jack headed back to Ben's room, desperation outweighing his urgency. "Emily," he called out as he re-entered, the sight before him making his heart freeze. Ben was staring blankly at the wall, his expression one of sheer confusion. Emily knelt beside him, a hand on his shoulder, but her eyes were filled with worry. Jack, he was asking about the accident. He doesn't remember anything. Jack rushed to Ben's side, gripping his friend's hand tighter, offering silent strength. Ben, listen to me. You had an accident, but you're safe now. There were some complications, but you're alive. That's what matters. Ben blinked, his brow furrowing. But I feel so lost. I don't remember. His voice trembled, slicing through the air like glass. Jack swallowed hard. That's okay, buddy. Just focus on what you do have. You have Emily. You have me. But even as he spoke, Jack's mind raced. How could they get through this? He felt pressure build in his chest, and he knew they were on the edge of something overwhelming. Suddenly, another nurse entered, her face pale and strained. Emily, Ben, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to monitor vital signs. Ben, can you try to follow my finger? He nodded, but it was as if he had just gone underwater, struggling to resurface. Jack couldn't stand seeing Ben like this, lost and uncertain in a world that had once felt so familiar. Ben, look at me, Jack said, forcing his voice to stay steady. You're going to remember. Just give it time. He could feel Emily's presence comforting, steadying the room, yet it paled against the wave of fear washing over him. Yet outside, chaos continued to unfold. They could hear the commotion through the walls, the direct consequence of lives intertwined in pain. Jack's stomach churned. I have to go check again, he said, the weight of his decision pulling on his chest like an anchor. Jack, please. Emily's voice wavered, but he couldn't meet her gaze, he could only focus on Ben. Stay with him, okay? I'll be right back. He stepped back into the hallway, pushing through the doctors and nurses as they moved in precise, frantic choreography. Jack didn't even realize he was gripping the edge of an 4-pole until he felt the cool steel. What is happening out there? He whispered as he caught the gaze of a doctor rushing by. She paused for just a heartbeat, catching her breath. Active shooter situation, lockdown protocols. The words fell like lead into Jack's gut. Confusion deepened into fear as he jolted back, his heart racing. An active shooter? They were trapped inside, their fragile peace shattered once more. He turned back towards Ben's room, panic starting to spiral. He had to get back there, he had to protect them. What if the danger seeped into their little sanctuary? With each hurried step, memories of laughter and late-night talks with Ben and Emily flickered before him. How could it come to this? The air felt heavy, like a storm about to break. And that's when a loud crash echoed down the hallway, sending his heart racing. Was it more chaos? Was it something far worse? Stay alive, Ben, he murmured, pushing through the growing fear. I'm coming back. But as he rushed toward the room, Jack couldn't shake the thought of the darkness lurking just outside. What would it take to keep them safe? Jack's heart thundered in his chest as he sprinted down the corridor, dodging bewildered families and frantic staff. The reality of the hospital's chaos crashed over him like a tidal wave. He had to get back to Ben and Emily. His mind raced with images of them huddled together, the safe haven of their bond drowning in uncertainty. He reached the double doors of Ben's room, pushing them open with urgency. The sight before him, however, stopped him in his tracks. Emily was still kneeling beside Ben, but the fear in her eyes had morphed into something deeper, more profound, a mix of dread and courage. Emily. Jack called, but her attention was focused on the TV in the corner of the room. News anchors looked frantic as they reported live coverage of the situation unfolding outside. Local reports about the active shooter blared through the screen, cutting through the haze of worry. Jack, it's worse than we thought, Emily said, her voice trembling slightly. They're saying there are casualties and the shooter hasn't been caught yet. Ben turned his head for the first time, trying to comprehend the gravity of the news. What are they saying? he whispered, a flicker of realization dawning on him. Jack stepped forward, forcing himself to maintain control. Ben, it's just a precaution. We're safe here. You and Emily are safe. But inside, dread clawed at his insides. As if sensing the fragility of his reassurance, Emily reached for Ben's hand, gripping it tightly. Do you remember anything from before? She asked softly, taking a breath that rattled in her throat. Shaking his head, Ben's expression twisted in frustration. Just flashes a car crash. I don't remember anything else. It's okay, Jack said, his voice steadying, though his own anxiety bubbled beneath the surface. You'll remember. We'll help you. Just focus on feeling better. Suddenly, an amplified voice echoed through the hospital. Attention, the hospital is on lockdown. Please stay in your rooms. All non-essential personnel must evacuate immediately. This announcement sent a jolt of panic through Jack. They were trapped, no way out. The world outside was chaotic, and they were at the mercy of a stranger, someone who held all the power. They're making it worse, we're stuck. Emily's voice cracked as she looked at Jack, pleading for some way out of this nightmare. Listen, Jack said, channeling everything he had into his tone. We have to stick together. We can't go panicking. We're strong. Remember? We've fought through so much already. Ben will come back to us. There was a moment of silence, the weight of uncertainty enveloping them like a thick fog. Emily nodded, but her eyes sparkled with unshed tears. Jack felt his own heart sink deeper. What if it fell apart now? Just then, another crash echoed down the corridor, louder and more alarming than the last. Jack's stomach twisted. What was that? Ben's grip tightened around Emily's hand. I can't just sit here. We have to do something. Stay put. Jack urged, though he could feel the urgency gnawing at his resolve. We have to stay safe. There's nothing we can do. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling of responsibility weighing heavy on his shoulders. This was not just about him, it was about protecting them, keeping them safe from whatever was on the other side of that door. As he looked from Ben to Emily, he could see the fight in their eyes. They were all in this together, bound by love and fear. But as another loud noise erupted in the distance, Jack couldn't help but wonder what horrors awaited them beyond the fragile walls of their sanctuary. Could they survive this together, or was their strength not enough? Jack's heart raced, a torrent of emotions flooding through him. He felt trapped, not just within the walls of the hospital but also in the nightmare that seemed to be unfolding. The sounds outside were a reminder of how fragile their safety was, and every crash sent his adrenaline surging. He glanced at Emily, whose eyes were wide with fear, and then at Ben, still clinging to her hand. They needed to stay strong, but it was becoming harder by the minute. The uncertainty was gnawing at them, and Jack could feel his own resolve beginning to fray. Okay, Jack said, forcing a calmness he didn't feel. Let us think. If we stay here, they'll have to keep us safe. Right? But what if something happens? Ben's voice was barely above a whisper, laced with worry. I don't want to be a sitting duck. Ben, we don't know what's happening out there, Emily interjected. Her hand trembled slightly, but she remained steadfast. Let's just wait until we have to make a decision. Another sound this time, it was closer and more terrifying. Jack's breath hitched in his throat as they all froze, the atmosphere thick with dread. He peered out into the hallway, straining to hear any more movement. Just then, a nurse dashed past, her eyes wide with panic, clutching what looked like a makeshift weapon. What was that? Emily said, her voice trembling. I don't know, Jack replied, his stomach sinking further. But we can't let fear take over. They sat in silence for a moment, the heavy weight of uncertainty settling in the space around them. Jack reeled from the anxiety of their predicament, but he couldn't let himself buckle. Emily, he said softly, if you've got ideas, please, I'm all ears. I think we need a plan. She took a deep breath. Maybe we should. What if we barricade the door? It could give us a little more time if someone tries to come in. Jack nodded, appreciating her practicality. Okay, we'll do that. We can use the curtains and whatever else we find. As he moved toward the door, he caught sight of Ben, who was intently watching the TV again, his face pale. They're saying it could be hours before anything is settled. The shooter is still out there. Ben, don't think about that, Jack said, trying to stay focused. He reached for the door, the handle cold beneath his fingers. We will be fine. You're going to be fine. Let us do this, Emily said, determination radiating from her. They fell into a rhythm, moving furniture and using anything they could find to block the entrance. Jack felt the gravity of the moment. Each beam from the outside world felt like a reminder of the danger lurking just beyond their sanctuary. As they finished barricading, Ben suddenly spoke up, his voice steady despite his fear. You both have been amazing through all of this. I know I've been lost since the accident. I just want you to know how much I appreciated everything. Jack glanced at Emily, whose eyes were misty. We're family. We'll always take care of each other, she said softly, squeezing Ben's hand. But before Jack could respond, an announcement crackled over the intercom, interrupting. Attention, all patients and visitors are advised to remain in their designated areas. A security breach has occurred, and backup is on the way. Panic surged once more. What does that mean for us? Ben asked, looking even more alarmed. We wait, Jack said firmly, though dread twisted within him. We stay put. We're safe here. We will get through this. A deafening noise suddenly erupted nearby, a series of shouts that sent Jack's heart racing. The weight in the air thickened, as if the world had stopped for just a moment. Jack exchanged a frantic glance with Emily, fear clear in both their eyes. In that instant, the door rattled violently, and Jack's stomach dropped. What was happening outside? Would they break through? As other voices joined the chaos, Jack knew they were on the brink of something monumental. They had to brace for whatever was coming, but could they face it together? He took a deep breath, ready to lead, ready to fight for the ones he loved. But could their resolve withstand the storm that was about to burst in? As the door rattled, Jack felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through him. He stood protectively in front of Ben and Emily, feelings of duty flaring within him. Instinct kicked in. They were cornered, but he wouldn't let fear pull them apart. Stay close, he urged softly, his voice steady despite the chaos thrumming outside. Emily nodded, but he could see the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, mixed with the raw determination to protect Ben. We need to stay quiet, she whispered, inching towards Ben, who held onto her hand like a lifeline. We can't give them a reason to come in here. The noise intensified, shouts and frantic footsteps reverberated down the hall, and Jack's heart raced with every echo, each second stretching into an eternity. He braced against the door, feeling the vibrations of the world outside, a reminder that danger lurked just beyond their fragile barrier. Can you hear what they're saying? Ben asked, his voice low, eyes darting from Jack to Emily. Jack leaned in, trying to filter through the noise, searching for anything to anchor their fears. Beyond the door, an authoritative voice broke through the din. This is the police. We're securing the area. Wait for instructions. The words gave Jack a glimmer of hope. They were their help was on the way. But it also tasted bitter, they were still trapped. A momentary silence washed over the intensity, bracing them all as they held their breath. Minutes stretched on, each passing second eking away the calm. Emily's fingers tightened around Ben's hand, offering silent reassurance. Jack's mind raced. How would they ever explain this to Mike if he were there? How would he want them to react? It felt surreal, as though they were caught in a nightmare they could not wake from. Once again, the intercom crackled, this time more urgent. Attention, please remain calm. We are isolating the suspect. Stay hidden. Do not come out until instructed. Their sanctuary felt eerily quiet, the weight of fear pressing down like a storm cloud. Jack turned his gaze towards Emily, her eyes glistening with fear and resolve. He felt an overwhelming wave of protectiveness. "We'll get through this. Stay strong," he promised, squeezing her shoulder, allowing their shared strength to bind them together. Just then, a rumble came from the hallway, the sound of feet pounding against the floor. Jack's heart thudded. "What's happening?" Ben's voice trembled again, echoing their fears. No sooner had Jack opened his mouth to respond when the door burst open, and armed police officers flooded the room, weapons drawn. "Get down!" one shouted, and instinctively, all three of them dropped to the floor, hearts racing. "Are you hurt?" another officer asked, scanning the room quickly. Their presence shifted the atmosphere, filling Jack with a mixture of relief and lingering dread. "We're safe now," one officer assured, moving cautiously around them, eyes alert, scanning every corner. "Yes, but we need to help him." Emily pointed to Ben as she knelt beside him, panic rising in her chest. The officers exchanged glances and moved closer to Ben, but Jack held his ground, his protective instinct roaring back. "He just came out of surgery. We can't move him." "Calm down, sir," one officer responded, holding up a hand to pacify him. "We need to secure the area first. We will take care of him." Emily and Ben remained close, hearts pounding in sync as the officers began to work. Jack was torn between the urgency to protect his family and trust the officers to keep them safe. A tense focus overtook the room, the realization that this was not just about them, but about the wider community. A community that had already lost so much. "It's okay," Ben whispered, his voice barely carrying over the sudden chaos. "We're okay, right?" Jack met his gaze, feeling the weight of their struggles and triumphs surge through him. "We are," he said firmly, extending his hand to Ben. In that moment, as fear danced around them, a small spark ignited within their circle. They were alive, they were together, and in that shared heartbeat, they found a thread of hope. Woven into their bond, the officers continued their work, asking questions, grounding them back into reality. One officer directed the others in keeping an entrance secure, while another crouched beside them. "We're going to take your friend out shortly. We need to ensure he is stable for transport." Jack's heart squeezed at the thought of Ben being uprooted again. But he focused on Emily, who met his gaze steadily, determination filling her eyes. "We're in this together," she mouthed, and he nodded. Outside the room, the chaos of sirens and shouting continued, but they were surrounded by a wall of assurance. The police worked swiftly, and as they began to roll Ben gently onto a stretcher, Jack felt a wave of gratitude swell inside him. With every mundane gesture, the world felt just a little more whole. For every heartbeat in the turmoil, these were their lives, intertwined, fragile, fierce. "We're not giving up," Jack said, his words ringing with the confidence swelling within him. They rolled Ben towards the door, the officers guiding them out, hearts uniting in one strong beat against the chaos remained outside. With Emily close by, he felt anchored, like their transformations, their grief, pain, and love were sealed with an unbreakable bond. As they exited the room, Jack glimpsed back. They had weathered storms before, but each battle they faced together. This moment was a testament to the strength forged amidst pain and hardship, the resilience of families sewn from the tapestry of others' stories, and as they stepped out, leaving the fragility of the hospital chaos behind, Jack took a deep breath. The air felt different. Alive. Brimming with possibility as sunlight began to peek through solemn clouds threatening earlier. It wrapped around them, the warmth of hope spreading, stoking the embers of love and memory about to light a new path. The future remained uncertain, but together, they would fight for it, holding tightly to the threads of understanding and connection they had built. Tomorrow would come. Together, they would face what lay ahead, one heartbeat, one day at a time. As Jack looked at Emily, he found hope reflected in her eyes. And in that shared moment, surrounded by camaraderie, they knew one thing for certain: they would not let go. There was so much to fight for. And in that instant, a heated urgency ignited inside him again. Jack turned to the viewers with a piercing stare. "You need to subscribe now. Don't wait not even one more second to share our story. It's time to build this community. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm so they can see it too. Comment your reactions and feelings about this ending. Share it with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. This is the moment to show your support.